Hi, Mikey. My name is Jay. My question for you deals with education. And just being honest, I haven't really heard or seen much coming from your campaign when it comes to public education in our great state. I guess the biggest question coming to my mind is the school funding formula. And I hope you saw it. The fact that, we had some districts contemplate bankruptcy. We've had districts sell school buses and even schools. We've had football teams cut. We've had Special Olympics dropped. We even had tons of personnel also cut due to the cuts in the school funding formula. So my question for you is, how do you feel about the funding formula? Is this something you're going to keep? Is this something you want to change? Any input would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Great question. What I've been talking about with the school funding formula is that we need to modernize and stabilize it. And by that, I mean the formula hasn't been reworked in years. So we have to make sure that we're accounting for some students with disabilities because different districts have different number of students, and modernizing the formula so that it takes into account some of the differences that the districts are dealing with. But we also need to stabilize it so that year over year, there aren't these wild swings. And then as you've stated, leads to some of these shutdowns and these real difficulties in our schools. But I'd also say that I'm very concerned right now. We're not spending taxpayer dollars where we would want to spend them in education. And so we have these administrative costs. In fact, we often say, you probably heard during the campaign, we have more municipalities than California, and we have more school districts than municipalities. And much of the money is going to these administrative systems, sometimes not even running K through 12 school systems, buildings that are antiquated and really hard to keep up to date and really costly. Instead, as governor, I want to make sure we're putting money into our students, into our teachers, and into the buildings we need for education. I also am going to address third grade reading. That is a key inflection point, and too many students across our state are not reading at grade level. And I'm going to do that, I'm going to help with phonics-based reading. That is what helps most students learn to read better. We're not using that right now. So we're going to put money, continue to support the funding for teachers to get that education, as well as ensure high-intensity tutoring, which I've worked on in the House and now worked with people in the state to do. So we continue to get our students back on track from any learning loss they're still experiencing. And then finally, addressing the mental health crisis with more mental health resources in our schools and passing the Kids Online Safety Act.
The other part of the school funding formula, which I mean, you know as well as I do, I don't know many people who don't think that it's not broken because we've been talking about this for years, but of course it's so closely tied to property taxes, highest in the nation property taxes. So how can you address the school funding formula while addressing property taxes at the same time, not keeping those from rising even more? Because every governor I've lost track at this point of how many years in administrations has said they want to address both, especially property taxes. And let's face it, they've only been able to do so much. They haven't been able to truly bring them down.
This is really frustrating too, because some of the school districts have actually gotten a bit of a windfall with the new funding when the funding formula is fully funded, and yet those taxes haven't gone down. So the state puts more and more money into schools, and yet somehow the property taxes of the municipalities don't go down. So I think what we have to do is really make sure people are aware of where their money is being spent. As far as property taxes, it's largely schools, and it's largely the state health benefits plan. And so the school systems, that's why I say we've got to share services better. We can't have all of these administrative
Nobody wants
fees.
to give up home rule, though.
But I think when you look at the administration, I'm not saying you start with giving up any schools. I think we do need to look at the numbers of students around the state and help educate people as to whether or not they think it still makes sense to run a full school system. But you certainly can look at the administrative cost and say, okay, administratively, we want money going to our students, but you also have to address that state health benefits plan. It is going up 20-30% a year. It's in a death spiral. It's not going to deliver for us. And so that's why I'll put an independent auditor in there, make sure that we are clawing back the money that's not coming back into the states and to the municipalities, hundreds of millions of dollars, so that we can start to address that state health benefits plan and drive down costs there as well.
Congresswoman, we have to take another quick break. We'll be right back.